Thank you for joining us on another video today. Today, we have the legendary Cutman for boxing and MMA. Thank you for joining us today, Jacob. Stitch Duran, man. How's life going lately, man? How's everything
living la vida loca, man.
There we go.
You know, I was just telling my wife, Charlotte, it's nice to see young entrepreneurs, you know, going and taking that first step. And, you know, I always tell people it's that first step. We're all scared to go somewhere, right? Mm-hmm. But unless you take that first step, you'll never get there, you know. So cross that line and follow your dreams, and I'm glad you guys are doing that.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. How's life been? How's everything been
Good,
going?
busy.
Yeah, a lot of fights coming, a lot of...
Staying busy, thank God. Just finished filming Creed 3 about a month ago.
Wow.
And,
nice.
you know, I've been working a lot of fights with Top Rank, and still promoting the cut cream, CBD cut cream we have, and just all kinds of programs, you know, so staying busy.
Nice, man. You know, a lot of times you get questions such as how you became a stitchman or cutman, and how you entered the game. But my question before we get into that is, who inspired you to start as a cutman?
Well, you know, growing up as a farm worker, right? I grew up as a farm worker in the Central Valley of the San Joaquin. But in baseball, I wanted to be a pro ball player, and the guy that inspired me there was Roberto Clemente.
Wow.
But when it comes for doing the right things and all that, of course, my parents, you know, they gave us good work ethics and values and all that. But Cesar Chavez, that created the United Farm Workers, he's always inspired me, and even until this day, you know, still do it for the raza.
Nice, man. Yeah. Nice. You know, a lot of times, you know, we were just talking about doing it for la raza, you know, and si se puede, you know, a lot of this can be conquered. Well, my next question was, how do you feel like timed in between the rounds? You know, how do you go ahead and keep your composure during the rounds and being able to go ahead and proceed to fix them up? And
good question, man. Yeah. In my mind, mentally, I tell myself it's not my cut. So, you know, but right. That's a good question, because composure is your number one ally.
Exactly.
You know, people ask me all the time, what's it take to be a good cut man? And I said, first and foremost, you gotta keep your control. Because you as a fighter, you're gonna look at me in the eyes, I'm gonna look at you in the eyes. And if you look paranoid, he's gonna get paranoid. So you gotta show that confidence all the time and inspire him to go out there and go that one more round.
You just gotta keep cool, you know, and just kind of help out as much as you can. Right?
Yeah, and that's what you do. You know, you give him that opportunity to go out there knowing that he's okay, and knowing you take it away the disadvantage. So if a fighter is cut or he's swollen, usually when a doctor or a referee stops the fight, it's because the fighter is at a disadvantage, and your job is to take that away from him. So
wow. And I know it takes a lot of guts to be doing it in like a minute or 30 seconds, you know, and being able to go ahead and make sure that you could give them the extra round. Truly. What type of confidence do you go ahead and give them going into the fight? You know, a lot of fighters are always tensed up truly before I sparred or we're ready to go ahead into a fight. You know, I would get tensed up, you know, not so confident.
Good. You guys are doing pretty good with the questions, man. I like that. So let me give you a couple of little different analogies that happen. Frank Mir, UFC fighter, world champion, former world champion, his quote is, when I see Stitch walking into the dressing room, my stomach drops because I know it's time to fight. So that's that moment you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I had Vitor Belfort, another world champion from the UFC. He says, when Stitch walks into the dressing room, even though I know he's working on the other side, he brings that calming effect with him. You know, so these fighters, even though they're modern day gladiators, they're all babies inside, and my job is to take care of the baby. And so, I mean, I've had guys, when I'm wrapping their hands, start crying.
Wow.
You know, but I understand, because there's that
emotion,
adrenaline, the emotion, getting ready to go out there and literally fight for your life, you know. But, you know, I let them cry. I'll kind of try to let them know I'm there to cover their back and give them a hug and go out there and throw some chingazos. And the guy that started crying ended up winning the fight. You know, so there's outside of more just wrapping hands and working cuts, you gotta get into their inner soul, and they have to know that you're with them. So
you just gotta comfort them. You know, you gotta keep them composed and keep them moving forward so that they go out there as a winner.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly.
That winning mentality.
And then even during the fight is like Andre Ward. When Andre fought, he got cut, and one of the quotes he says, you know, I got cut, But then I thought, well, I got Stitch in my corners, so I took that away from him, right? And that's what we want to do as a Cutman.
I was about to say that, having you as a Cutman in my corner would have been just a lot of confidence boost right there and then, knowing how you take care of fighters. Do you recall your first fight as a Cutman? Do you recall as like the nervous wracking? Can you walk me through how that was?
Yeah, it's a good question. The first time I got paid was one of my kickboxers, Matt Weber, gave me $15 to work his corner, right? And but yeah, that was probably one of my earlier. Cause I used to have a school of kickboxing, right? Mm-hmm. And but before I did the kickboxing, I worked with amateur boxers in Oakland, California, and I remember the first fight that I worked. I'm working like 150 miles an hour, and one of these veteran coaches comes up and he's laughing at me, and he said, "Hey, relax." He goes, "A minute is a long time." And once he said that, then I put that into my perspective, and now I know that minute round. But yeah, just I try to get as much done in that 1 minute. And he said, "Man, take your time. You got a lot of time."
That's how it all starts. But just with experience and time, you just start to realize that you just keep going.
That's that first step, right?
Yeah,
that first step, exactly.
I always tell the kids is, the first time is always going to be the hardest one. Once you take that shot, then, you know how to absorb that shot. So
yeah, a lot of days nowadays, boxers are really tough, right? They have a really big ego on them. They have that fighter ego on them where they don't want to give up. But how do you break it to them when there's a big slice or they have a big injury that it's time to go ahead and go down?
That's pretty good, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where that psychology comes in. That's where that eye contact comes in. My job is, I always, because now that I'm working with Top Rank, I'm doing a lot of we're kind of the house Cutman. When the COVID first finished, they kept us on board, right? But I'll let them know. I said, "Look, I'm not going to wait till you start swallowing. I'm going to keep ice on you every round. I'm going to do a lot of preventive maintenance. But if something happens, don't worry about it because I got your back. I'm going to make sure that you walk out as handsome as you walk in." So you put that in their mind, right? And like Andre Ward, I know that Stitch is in my corner.
Nice.
So,
yeah, definitely.
Good question.
I could definitely say the confidence boost if I had you in a corner or something would be amazing. This actually leads into my next question as well is, a lot of days nowadays, there's fathers that are trainers of their sons, and I've been seeing a lot of fights lately where they feel like they know their son better than anyone, which may be true, but I've just been seeing a lot of fights where they just keep going and going and don't stop.
I've worked a lot of fights. I've worked a lot of father-son combinations. That's a very good question. And it works for a certain time, but there's a certain point when the fighter gets in trouble, the father thinks more like a father than he does as a trainer.
Exactly.
And sometimes they base decisions on their heart and not on the practicalities. And, I've seen that happen, so I had one fighter that when he lost his world title, his father got his mouthpiece and just threw it away. You don't belong here. And he's kind of discredited him after he lost his world title. He was a world champion before that. But yeah, it's father-son combinations are good for a certain point. And then after that, you got to let people of more experience take over of your fighter. Gabe Flores from Napa, his father works with him in Napa Stockton. He was getting beat the fight before, and he didn't want to stop, and his father wanted to stop it, and they start arguing, and the father lets it go, and he continues taking a beating, and to the point where the father was going to jump in and stop the fight the last 15 seconds. And I said, no, at this point, don't even stop, because now you're going to break his confidence and break your relationship with him. So let the fight finish. I mean, he got beat, but he let the fight finish on that point, so yeah, it's a good question. Very, very few people have asked that question.
I do remember watching that fight. Hell of a fighter, by the way. He has a lot of heart. Nowadays, you see a lot of boxers and MMA fighters take a loss, right, and they feel like the career's over. More so, you see this more in boxing, because in MMA, for example, Brandon Moreno just won a championship during the UFC. He had 5 losses, but in boxing, they want to be perfect like Floyd Mayweather, right? And they think one loss on the career is kind of done for. What advice do you have for fighters out there that give up after a loss? And
yeah, and you're right though. In the mixed martial arts, it's not the amount of losses. I used to do a lot of fights in Japan for Pride, and there the Japanese respect you for the how you fight, whether you win or lose. And but yeah, you have to be realistic in this game. We always say that the only thing that counts is the truth. Because in MMA they could continue 4, 5, 6, 7 losses, continue and still go up to the upper echelons. Mm-hmm. But in boxing, you got 4, 5, 6 losses, then that puts you as an opponent, mm-hmm. and then you got to understand where you're going to go from there. So it's important to have a good team with you that are honest with you and telling you exactly what you want to do. Mm-hmm. And in these early stages, I tell these young guys, if you do it for the money, you're doing it for the wrong reasons, because you're not going to get rich right off the bat. Yeah. But some of these guys that make a big payday, then they start buying the jewelry, the diamonds, wow. the gold and all that. And, they got to be educated.
It's a really good point, and that's a younger generation nowadays, because back then you wouldn't really see it unless they were greats, Yeah. So, yeah, take us through a little bit through your younger life, How did the boxing and MMA start for you?
Yeah, well, I grew up in the Central Valley of California, San Joaquin Valley, which mm-hmm. is the agricultural capital of the world. And my parents, we were farm workers. And nice. Basically, I was born and raised in a migrant camp. Well, my address is CPC number 12 for California Packing Company. Mm. So my parents were farm workers, and we were all farm workers till I got out of high school. But baseball is something that I always excelled in, and it's what my dreams were, to be a pro ball player. And I walked down to Merced College, which was like 9 miles away from my little town of Planada. Well, I lived in the migrant camp, and then the second grade I moved to Planada. It's like 4 miles away, but it was a little town of like 1,500 people, all raza, all farm workers. And but yeah, so I walked down to Merced College, and I didn't have a car, so I would go to school with my friends, and after school they would go home, and I'd stay in practice, and I'd have to hitchhike home. Yeah. So I didn't know about grants and scholarships and opportunities, and so I joined the military in 1974. I joined in 1972. Nice. 1974, they stationed me in Thailand, and that was during the Vietnam War. But I always said if I went to the Orient, I would have studied the martial arts. That was during the Bruce Lee era, and Thai boxing, Muay Thai. So I trained there for that year, and then got back, and that's how I got into boxing. I lived in Oakland, and I started training at King's Boxing Gym in Oakland just to improve my hands, and met Pete Alvarado. We ended up training fighters and promoted a boxing event in Oakland. And, from there, my wife and I made the move to Fairfield and opened up a school of kickboxing. And, it's how I learned to do what I do. And I was already at the A level in kickboxing. I had worked with a lot of top fighters, and I was a trainer, plus I was a Cutman. But I wanted to move to Vegas to be a Cutman. I didn't come to be a trainer, though I could train. But when I got to Vegas, moving back, I waited for a while to get a job transfer. I worked for R.J. Reynolds Tobacco Company for 23 years. I put in for a job transfer, and I waited, and finally I get a call, and they say that there's an opening in Vegas, but you got to be there in a week. I said, man, I can't be there in a week. I talked to the manager here, and he gave me 2 weeks, and I swear in 2 weeks I transferred my school to one of my fighters. We put our house on the market. We sold it in 2 weeks and put my family in a U-Haul, and we drove 9 hours to Las Vegas. So, that's how I got started. And then I came here solely to be a cut man, but I was in the gyms, and I saw guys training, and I said, I could do that, and I could do that, and I could do that. And so I would always do pads. I couldn't be a full-time trainer because I had an 8-to-5 job, but I could do pads. So I did pads I used to work with Johnny Tapia, Raul Marquez. I did pads for Mike Tyson, Francois Botha when he fought Tyson, and a lot of other guys, So, but then the UFC came around and started working with them, and it just kind of took me in a different course.
Dang, hell of a story, man. Like, I feel like a lot of our minorities should definitely, take your story into hands and definitely put it something in their own, because, us minorities don't have a lot of opportunities like other people do. So we just gotta show, like you say, la raza. We gotta show la raza like what's up, and we gotta push ourselves forward and
100% right, man. And I've written a couple books. I wrote a book called From the Fields to the Garden. Growing up as a farm worker, the fields and the garden is Madison Square Garden. Been there many times now, bro.
Wow,
so,
man.
So I wrote that book, and
that's beautiful.
There's some very, very nice stories, very inspirational stories, because they're all true. And then I went, UFC let me go, and then I went into the second book because everybody wanted a second book and the second book. So there's From the Fields to the Garden 1 and 2. And they're available at Amazon. But a lot of inspirational stories, and yeah. So now they're filming a documentary on my life, and
wow,
and
that's awesome.
It started. When I signed with this production team. A week later, I get a call that Triple G is fighting, of all places, the Garden. So they kind of readjusted their budget, and they went to New York, and they had all access, and they got some great footage, and I'll show it to you guys when we're done. I'll show you a trailer. So they got all that, which was great, and they made a little sizzle for a sponsor, and then the COVID kicked in, and so they were down for a while, and they came back and they interviewed Tyson Fury, and just 3 weeks ago, they interviewed Michael B. Jordan from the Creed.
Oh, wow.
So he came forward, he came forward, and they interviewed him. I was in New York for fights, but the production team, they had to rent what's the name of the hotel? Astoria. The expensive hotel. They had to rent a room there, and then Michael B. Jordan joined them there for the interview. So he gave them solid interview.
Wow.
He wouldn't tell me what he said, but I know that he said a lot of good things.
I bet.
I was with him for a Creed 1, Creed
really
2.
good guy, right?
Ah, man, the best. I'm telling you. Every day I wrapped his hands like this. And I gave him the consejos. I gave him the advice of how to be a top pro and in this sport. And I remember in the first one, after like the 5th week of filming, I'm wrapping his hands. I said, Michael, I gotta bless you as a knight, bro. As a fighter, I gotta knight you as a fighter, because everything you did to represent our sport was at the highest level, right?
Yeah.
And so in the Creed second one, I'm telling him again how proud I am of him, and he's saying, Stitch, we went from being, and here's where you're talking about the inspirations, right? We went from being actors to writers, producers, directors, and he looks at me like this and says, I'm directing Creed 3, and you're with me as long as you want.
Wow.
So for me, that was
it was heart touching, huh?
Yeah, of course, because it came right from his heart.
Yeah. And very good movies, I want to say.
Yeah, they're excellent.
Really, really
they're
good.
awesome. And this one here,
Sylvester Stallone, did a good.
And then let me tell you about Sylvester Stallone. A couple of things, right? So in the script, when I get the call, I look at the script, and my name is Marcel. I said, I don't know anybody named Marcel, right? So I said, I'm going to have to try to figure this one out, right? But when it was time for Rocky to introduce us to Adonis in the start of the movie, he says, this is Stitch. He's the best cut man in Philadelphia, right? Man, I was so excited. And the next day I thanked him. He says, he goes, it has to be authentic. So that Stitch stayed in the movie.
I do remember that part in the movie.
And I'll give you another part is, remember when Adonis is working with Rocky. Rocky's training them. Well, in the nighttime by themselves. Well, we had just walked out in the movie, and I yelled, "Hey, take care of him. He's still a little pup and all that." But we're in Philadelphia, and it's snowing outside, and we're in the filming. The gym's in the second floor, so on the stairs down, we're waiting and back there away from the cameras. And all of a sudden, I hear Stitch, and I said, "Now maybe it's part of the movie," and. Yeah, sure what. They filmed it, right? So the next day, I'm wrapping Michael's hands. I said, look, Michael, I got to tell you, man, I don't kiss nobody's butt, but this scene right there was extremely important. And I'm going to tell you why. Because, my job as a Cutman is to take care of you. And you know that I had just left. And then Rocky's working with you, and Rocky gets sick, and he throws up, and you pick him up and all that. And the first thing you do is you yell for my name. I could understand that because my job is to take care of you, and I had just left. So that was in the movie.
Wow.
It's crazy, huh?
Yeah.
Those 2 episodes, yeah.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Man, and kind of on the movie part, you've been in multiple movies, right? So how's the acting career going for you so far?
I'm not an actor, bro.
No, well,
I laughed with my wife. I said, I've been in 7 movies, and I said I'm not an actor, but it's easy to play what I do. But when it comes to lines and all that, I'm not good at that. But I've been blessed.
It's the thought that counts, as long as you put in the effort.
Well, it's the mechanics. Everything that I do, and in an actual fight, my job is not to give instructions, right? And that's the way it's perceived here. But on this third one, Michael's giving more liberty. Just kind of, they mic'd me throughout all the filming, and basically they caught whatever lines I am using, and that's the reality. So I don't know what they're gonna say or what I'm gonna say. I said a lot, but I don't know what's gonna say, right? And but that's he's a good guy, man.
You were in the movie Here Comes the Boom too with Kevin James.
Let me tell you a story with that one too, all right? So number one, my wife Charlotte is a big fan of Kevin James, right? And I'm doing a UFC, I think, at the MGM, and people are always taking pictures. Hey man, let's take a picture. And this guy says, hey man, let's take a picture. I said, all right, come on. He goes, no, I want to take a picture with you. He says, I'm Frank Karachi. I'm the director of Here Comes the Boom, and Kevin James wants you in the movie. I said, of course, yeah. So I go, I didn't have to audition, But once again, I get the script, and I don't have no lines. And I said, man, I'm going to have to figure something out, bro. Because when you get lines, you get what they call residuals. Yeah. And the residuals are pretty handsome. Every time they show it on TV, the movies, Europe, Asia, wherever they show it, you, through being a SAG, you get a percentage. And so I had to figure it out. But when it's time for me to do my scene with Kevin James, he says, Stitch, come here, man. We got to have you say something. So me, like a pendejo, I'm playing the part. I'm playing the part where, here's what I tell the fighters is, welcome to the UFC. Oh, that's great. That's great. So when the scene comes, they call me in, and I'm working on them, and I think the line's something like, oh, Stitch, I can't believe you're working on me. I'm a big fan, and man, what a week I'm having, and I'm working on him. And then finally I go, well, welcome to the UFC. I slap him, right, and they walk off, and everybody started laughing because they didn't know I was going to slap him. And they kept it. So when you see Here Comes the Boom, yep, well, welcome to the UFC. That was my big line.
Good scene. I might have to rewatch that because I was little when I watched it, so I don't really remember much. But you've worked with great fighters, and maybe some of the best fighters that I could imagine, such as Lyoto Machida, Forrest Griffin, Tyson Fury, the Klitschko Brothers, which we'll go back and talk about them because they're doing great out there in Ukraine, But what was your most memorable times with them, like that you remember out of all those people? Which one touched your heart the most?
I got stories with every one of them. I just did an interview. I got to show you guys. Right? I just did an interview the other day, and this guy had a picture of me with Forrest Griffith that I'd never seen when Griffith fought Shogun. And I told him, man, send me this picture. But look at this picture.
Dang. Stitch.
So,
wow.
So this is the cameras, huh?
The legend right there.
This was the fight where it was the first UFC fighter with the first Pride fighter, Shogun. Mm-hmm. And Forrest ends up with that big old cut right here. And this big vein that we have when you laugh, he popped it. Whenever you pop that vein, it's going to bleed like a pig, right?
Yeah.
And those are very hard to stop. So I used everything, man. And when I sit down, to the right of me is Don House, one of the Cutmen, and to the left is Dana White Sr. And we're looking and say, oh man, it's not bleeding, and it's not bleeding. And go back and I work on him. I use everything: the adrenaline chloride, 1/1000, the swab. I put in the eye cut to close up the blood vessels. The Avitine, which is like cotton candy, I plug it up. That's a coagulant. I used everything, and it worked. And they ended up going to the scorecards, and Forrest ended up winning. And that was my first big fight with them on that. But then what made us nice is he sends me a nice gift card to a nice restaurant and thanks me for doing all that, So
wow. Humble fighter.
Yeah, well, they appreciate it, And I mean, many times, where they give me a kiss and tell me they love me, I know when Forrest fought Stephen Bonner for the big show that made the UFC, I worked with Forrest, and before they give the decision, his coach is standing next to me and he says, Stitch, because I'm not gay, but I got to give you a kiss, man. Thank you for taking care of Forrest, you know.
Yeah.
But those are the kind of things that go on that I get to do, and people say, why do you enjoy your job? It's those moments.
Just those moments where people appreciate what you do, you know?
Yeah.
People appreciate you what you do.
Well, I made a lot of money for a lot of guys, you know, coming into that. You know,
Yeah.
look where Forrest is at now.
One more round, you
One
know,
more
just
round.
like you said,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, and then let me tell you about one more round. See, one more round was during the UFC when everybody had sponsors, right? And Mark Zucker, that created One More Round, was looking at the Rocky movies where he's telling, I got to go one more round. And he's a clothing designer anyway. But he thought that's a great idea because everybody in life should go one more round. That
100%.
right? So he got a hold of Matt Hughes and sponsored Matt Hughes. And Matt Hughes is the one that said, you know what, if anybody gives a fighter one more round, it's Stitch. Get a hold of Stitch. So he got a hold of me, and we became partners for many, many, many years. And still now, he makes my outfits like the ones I use for Tyson Fury and the ones I'm using with Top Rank. So he still makes my outfits. But that's where that one more round came from. And everybody to this day still yells out, Stitch, one more round. You know,
Nice, man.
So we kind of created a conversation on that.
Nice, you know.
Crazy.
You definitely motivate us, you know. I
Yeah.
want to say that. And to go back on the Klitschko brothers, you know, how was it working with them? You know, I know they're true warriors in the ring, but also warriors outside of the ring, you know. And my utmost respect to the Klitschko brothers out there, you know. They fighting for the country, and Lomachenko, Usyk, you know. It just shows the type of fighter that they are.
Yeah. Well, let's go back into Usyk. As a matter of fact, the 15th, I'm going to Saudi Arabia. Badu Jack is fighting up on the Usyk and Anthony Joshua card.
Nice.
But I send him. They call me for I have my stitch tape and all my equipment. I send them tape and gauze and all that so they could train. And then plus on the wrist strap, I have the Ukrainian colors. But going way back to December the 12th, 1991. Vitaly says 92. I say 91. But when the Soviet Union first broke, we took a team of professional boxers and kickboxers. And at that time, I had Mark Longo, that was a world champion kickboxer. So we went to the Ukraine and Kiev, and where Vitaly is the mayor of Kiev now. But we fought the Ukrainians in boxing and kickboxing, right? And that's my first encounter with them. And then I did Ocean's 11 with Vladimir. And after that, me and my partner, I used to co-host a radio show here called The 13th Round. Yeah. And me and my partner, Nick Ward, were watching fans walking into the MGM for a fight. And Emmanuel Stewart was the trainer. And at that time, he was commentating for HBO. And he's walking by, he says, Stitch, I need to talk to you about working with Vladimir. He goes like this. So I talked to Nick. I said, man, did you see what I saw? You know. So the next day he called me. He says, Vladimir says he wanted the guy that was in the movie with him to work with him. So I was with him for 8 years and did a lot of great, him and Vitaly, and then Vitaly retired. So I'm going to let you listen to a heartfelt message that Vladimir sent me while he's in the middle of the war.
From Ukraine.
In the movie Creed, they would always come to me as an advisor, right? Mm-hmm. So they're giving away the WBC belt, which is the green belt, right? The most prestigious belt. So Michael B. Jordan and the film crew come up and say, Stitch, who should give the belt away? So I give them the history. I said, well, look, the belt was created by Jose Sulaiman, the president of the WBC from Mexico City. It's the most prestigious belt out there. Should be given away by a Mexican. And there was one guy in the audience as the extras. And a guy about my age, nice guy, so I picked him to give the belt away. So here I am in Dallas with Ugas when he's fighting Earl Spence, and Mauricio, his son, is now the president because Jose passed away. I told him the story how we represented the belt at the highest level. But both Vitaly and Vladimir were WBC champions. Mm-hmm. He says, well, let's take a picture, all right? Let's take a picture and let's send it to the Klitschkos and let them know we're thinking about them.
Yeah.
Here's what Vladimir responded, bro. I'm going to let you listen to this. Watch.
My two favorite men, especially Stitch, with whom I spent so much time talking, and he actually saved my career on a lot of different stages. If Stitch wouldn't be in my corner, I would not make the record of 12 years being a champion.
Wow.
So that's so great to see you both. And Stitch is the man.
Wow.
Wow.
That gave me the chills.
Well, yeah, what do you think I felt like? You
Wow.
know, and knowing that they're in the battle, and maybe I took them away for a second or two out of the mind of fighting into being that, but going back into when he fought Anthony Joshua when he lost his world title, it was in Wembley Stadium, 90,000 people, and I didn't see him until Friday at the weigh-ins, him and Vitaly, and but I'm talking to him and I'm going through all these things, and you know what a fighter the night before a fight, they're not going to sleep, they can't sleep.
Yeah.
So I put my hand on his shoulder and I said, Vladimir, don't worry about nothing tomorrow. Take care of you like you're my son, and I leave. And here, before Michael Buffer does the announcements, I'm putting the final Vaseline on him. We're about this far apart, and he's like this, and all these people are watching, but nobody's hearing what we're saying. And he says, "You could call me son, bro."
Wow.
That gave me chills right then and there, right?
So
Then he
much
calls-
emotion, so much love, you know.
But that
I
was so
understand.
much love,
That's
you
what
know,
I'm
yeah.
saying. And he calls me, "Hey, Daddy," he joking around. But months later, I saw him in Germany, and I asked him. I said, Vladimir, that moment, why? Very simple. He says, Stitch, he goes, there's very few people I trust in my life. You are one of them. So that's the
Wow.
kind of stuff I get. And you're talking about, I'm going to take care of you like you're my son. Fast forward, go rewind to, you're talking about Lyoto Machida.
Yeah.
So all this came from Lyoto, my time with Lyoto, because when he fought Rashad Evans, he beat him for a world title, and I always worked with Lyoto, right?
Yeah.
And you remember his father's very Japanese, very proud,
Yeah.
shogun-ish type of man, and he's in the dressing room with his son, and he's very proud, and Lyoto's standing right by his father, and I walk in, and I said, congratulations, and this and that, and he looks at me in front of his father, says, Stitch, in the ring, you are my father. I said, wow.
Wow.
And his father. So I know that, that means a lot to them. And, Carol Parisian, if you remember when he fought Drew Fickett, he ended up with a major cut here. And I kept him in there. I took it upon myself because Manny Gambarian and Eric, I can't remember his last name, they were the coaches, but they got kind of shell-shocked. So I took it upon myself to take care of Carol. And months later, I see him at a fight at the MGM, and he's Armenian, and he's sitting there with his father. And I go check on him. How you doing? Good. So his father says, I want to thank you for taking care of my son. I want to invite you to my house for dinner. And that's very noble of him. But those kind of moments.
You create a lot of relationships in the world of boxing, in the world of MMA.
Yeah.
I could only imagine how much heartfelt you've been through, with all these fighters. You literally have them as your son in the ring, and
multiples, bro. I mean, I'm talking about 20s, 30s, 40s,
Yeah, and I mean, I bet it hurts, when you're seeing a lot of these fighters go through what they go through, and mostly now, there's a lot of studies out there with head injuries, and everything that has been going on with CTE, I believe is the word.
Damn.
How do you feel that the sport of boxing is going as far as safety?
Yeah, we're there's a lot of people that are taking advantage of that program, and we're not taking advantage of it. They're trying to make it where the fighters get some fair representation throughout the world, finances, education, but also the CT, dementia pugilistica, and all that. My daughter Carla and Hoyce Gracie. Rose Gracie, one of the Gracie daughters, they're already selling this program to the commissions on testing. When we get licensed, all you need is $50 and a license. You fill out an application. So they want to send them a series of questions so that whether you you don't lose, but it's teaching you about dementia pugilistica, the CT program. So the questions, concussions are linked to the brain disease, CTE. Is that true or false? Right?
I would say true.
All right. And then you have to be knocked out to suffer a concussion.
I would say no.
Yeah, I agree. See, CTE is not serious because there is a cure for it.
I would say no.
I agree. It is always safe to resume sparring if you wait 14 days after a concussion.
I would
false.
say definitely not.
I agree. Repeated hits to the head are not dangerous unless you go. I reread that one. Which of these symptoms is associated with stage 1 CTE? Short-term memory loss, myoaggression, depression, or all the above.
All of the above, for
too.
sure, you know.
Gloves and headgear prevent brain injury.
False.
Right, and then there is no way to train unless I'm getting hit in the head. Right, that's stupid. That's false. So we're trying to bring education to the table.
To the fighters,
we're trying to get associations, unions. We've been talking to unions about unionizing these guys. At worst, like baseball and all that, associations. You know, to give these guys proper health care and insurance and
Proper safety.
And proper safety, and then even legal issues. So, you know, the new generation, you guys are changing the world a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. You know, going to the concussion stuff, you know, I kind of put boxing to the side now. I still do it here and then, but when I used to spar, just knowing that you would have to receive repetitive heads, you know, from great guys and stuff like that, and then going home and having a severe concussion but not checking it out, the going to the doctor and going to get it checked out, you know, makes me think how much of these fighters go through that, you know, and how much severe things they have to go through without even knowing that they're going through it.
Yeah, I understand. You know, and also there's a documentary, a 10-piece miniseries documentary on basically the underbelly of combat sports. But they've interviewed some of the fighters, and some of them have dementia already, and some of them said that they were going to be taken care of by, you know, so and that didn't happen, and you know they're trying to survive. But I've noticed the transition in MMA. In boxing, I've noticed dementia because it's been, you know, a lot longer than MMA. But in MMA now, I'm noticing some of these fighters that I worked with before, years going fast forward, are now starting to show signs of dementia, slurred speech, and forgetting and stuff like that. So that's a big issue that still needs to be addressed.
Yeah,
Definitely a risk in the sport, huh? As much as there's fun and all that stuff, there's also a risk to it.
Well,
like
the ultimate goal. Eddie Mustafa Muhammad, former world champion, Hall of Famer, says the ultimate goal of a fighter is to render his opponent unconscious. That's the main victory. A knockout. So a knockout does create damage, right? And it's a combat sport.
Yeah.
So.
And obviously with all of that CTE and head trauma and stuff like that going around, I think the Nevada State Board and other cities are actually taking it and more precaution, you know, and I appreciate seeing that, you know. Can you walk us a little bit through your brand as far as the brand Stitch and how that's going?
Yeah, Stitches, you know, I've always been, I guess I've always been in marketing, working for RJ Reynolds Tobacco Company, but I've always come out with ideas. So like the war tape that's out there right now, I helped create that tape. Isham Harris, he was the original owner, and I was doing UFC in Sacramento, and he asked me if I would test it out and give him some opinions, and I did, and I made him some adjustments and all that, and worked with him for a while, and then the guys that were partner up with him took the company away from him, and I said, well, I'm not going to support that. I'll do my own. Yeah. So I have my own Stitch Premium line, and on the tape, like I say, I show them everything they know, but not everything I know, right? So, plus my name has on it, you know, I mean, you tell me who created War Tape, you know, who created Title Tape, who created Everlast Tape, well, who created Stitch Tape, right? So I made that tape, and it's doing very well, but also I created the KO swell, as a matter of fact, my wife Charlotte called it the KO swell, that's the end swell. Right?
Nice.
And I got that when I was coming back from London with UFC with Kenny Florian. I'm at the airport, and I'm getting the bottle, and I'm going like this. I said, wow. It's contoured, right? So all the swelling happens here and happens here, majority of it, 98% of it. So why not have a piece of iron that's contoured to fit in there? Because a lot of guys, their decision, they want to do this, and that's the wrong thing to do. It's cold direct pressure. So that I have that, and then plus I have I'm working with CBDinit.com. They created a cream for the healing process of cuts. So when they called me, once again, I asked them, what proof source do you have, right? He said, well, that's why we called you. So Jay Tim, the owner, I was working the bare knuckle fights before the COVID, so he would go to Florida with me to work the bare knuckle fights, and they all get cut.
Wow, those are brutal fights, right?
Yeah, they all get cut. It's a high percentage, but they sew them up in the dressing room. So Jay would take a picture of them, give them the cream, and they apply it twice a day, every day for a week, and send them back a picture, and the results have been tremendous. It has stem cell, vegetable stem cell, and CBD, collagen, vitamin E, and we're working on a batch now to have aloe vera. So I'm working with those products also. So, and then Cutman for Hire supplies. Juan Ramirez handles all boxing. If you're a trainer, if you're a Cutman, the only place to get all your stuff is there. So working a lot of products, and Curtis Wong, I say, that used to be my sponsor on my watches.
Yeah.
Now just creating a tequila brand, and called me. So I don't know what to expect on that. But I turned down a tequila company when Tyson Fury fought Deontay Wilder, because I just didn't like that image. So there's certain things you have to protect that you go up the ladder.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And you also sell hand wraps, right? And
that's the
tape.
gauze. Yeah, all that is through Cutman for Hire supplies. So it's Cutman and then the number 4 and then hiresupplies.com. And so I handle all that.
To all the coaches out there, all the boxers out there, Stitch Premium, you guys heard it here. So definitely going into the wrap.
Oh, and hold on now. And you'll see that tape on Creed 3.
Oh, okay. Yeah. You definitely got to look into it.
There was a scene where I'm wrapping Michael's hands.
Wow.
Right. And of course he's let me use his tape, my tape. So, that's how we give back to each other. He didn't have to do that,
No, he really didn't. But he's like, you know what? This is from a man Stitch. I got to take care of it.
And it's authentic, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, if I use it in real fights, why not use it with him? He's one of these fighters that are represented as a fighter, so why not?
Going into hand wrapping, I did hear a story of after the Canelo Triple G fight, there was talks where they were trying to overturn the fight due to Canelo supposedly getting layered with over wrapping.
Right.
And you're the pro and you're the expert at it. And I heard that somehow they got you involved, Can you walk me through how that was?
Sure, I can. So Tom Loeffler he's Triple G's manager. He's a good friend of mine because we all work with the Klitschkos together. Triple G's part of the Klitschko clan, right?
Right.
I mean, I met Gennady years and years ago. Same with Usyk. And but Tom called me and says, well, we're protesting with the commission because Canelo did stacking on his reps, stacking his gauze and tape. And he asked me what I thought about it, and I said, it's all bull. I said, the only reason you wrap a fighter's hands so they don't break them, as long as the rule book says that keep the tape 1 inch away from the knuckles back, as long as you do that, there should be no issue. You use the same amount of gauze, you use the same amount of tape. So, I kind of did that with Bob Bennett, the head of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, called me and asked me the same question. I told him the same thing. So the next day I met him at one of the gyms, and I wrapped his hands conventional way. I wrapped his hands stacking. And he didn't feel that much of a difference. I said, no, there's not a difference. It's all bull, And the next day he brought in a hand specialist, and I did the same thing. I wrapped his hands one way and then conventional, and he didn't feel that much of a difference. So now stacking is allowed in Las Vegas, as it should be, because everybody has different techniques. Your sparring is different than his sparring.
Yeah.
Your techniques are different than his techniques, right?
Definitely.
But the same thing goes to wrapping hands. As long as you follow the same guideline and keep it 1 inch away from the knuckles, it should be no problem. But education, this is the thing where none of us as pros, coaches, as cutmen, none of us have to be certified to be considered professionals.
Correct.
You pick up a towel, you throw it on your shoulder, and you fill out your application, $50, and you're a cutman.
Wow.
And I also tell young guys, and I work with a lot of 4-rounders, 6-rounders. I don't even charge them. I work with them because I say, I want you to understand the importance of having a good team. And it's extremely important to have a good team. They could win a fight for you. They could lose a fight for you, right? And but I also tell them, if you're looking for a cut man and the guy puts a swab in his mouth or he puts it in his ear, look for another cut man.
That's old school, right?
That's old school, man.
That's old school.
But when you break it down, it doesn't make sense because it's filthy. It's going in an open wound, right? Mm-hmm. So if you notice the new generation cut men, they have the wrist wrap, they put the swabs here, so they pull them out. They wear gloves. They put the Vaseline here. They work like a artist. They have small little towels, techniques that I put together. and they follow them because they make sense. It's the best way to work on cuts or swallowing or anything is that way.
I see UFC use that a lot, you know, before they walk into the octagon, they be putting them up. And that actually leads to my next question with Vaseline. You know, a lot of these fighters sometimes come up with so much Vaseline. How much Vaseline are you allowed to put?
Yeah, you know, that's it's a good question. In theory, the reason they use Vaseline is the punches will slip and you don't get cut. But cuts are real common, so I don't know how effective that is, right? But yeah, sometimes in anything, too much is as bad as not enough. You know, so you got to find that happy medium. And if it's too much, like we were watching fights the other day, and if the Vaseline is cold, you put it on, you'll see streaks. And my wife says, "Oh, that's a lot of Vaseline." Well, it's maybe not, but it's cold, so it changes colors, right? And I've told referees, no, just the Vaseline is cold. So yeah, too much is not. I wouldn't put too much. You don't want to. Number one, if they punch and they get it in their eye, or you know, guys you see nosebleeds, they'll put Vaseline inside their nose.
Yeah.
Oh, that is wrong. Yeah.
Wow, so I've been doing it wrong this whole time, putting Vaseline in my nose.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, no wonder I'm still bleeding, right? No, definitely.
Well, not only that, but see, Vaseline doesn't absorb into the skin. It doesn't attract water. So it just really just kind of there. There's no need for it.
Right.
You know?
Wow.
And when you put it on a cut, you kind of seal the cut. So that's a little bit different. Plus, I mix mine with the adrenaline chloride 1000, the vasoconstrictor. So it still has medication on it. And that's, but yeah, good question.
Man, yeah, well, you know, going back into the movies, I don't mean to retract or anything, but with working in Rocky and working in Creed and working in the Here Comes the Boom, is there anything down the pipeline for new movies coming anytime soon?
Things just happen, man. I don't anticipate anything. Things just happen.
Everything's just unpredictable, huh? You never know.
Yeah, they just happen. But you know, I'm the kind of guy where, like I say, I'm not scared to take that step, you know.
Yeah.
But being an actor full time, no. No, you know, I could be a Cutman in movies, but that's it. You know, if you ask me to be a cop, but that's what I told Sylvester Stallone in the first one. I said, man, I've been in all these movies and I'm typecast as a Cutman, but look, I could be a cop, I could be a terrorist, I could be a cartel, you know, something else, right? Yeah. But no, I prefer just, you know, I'm just blessed to do these movies. Yeah.
Man, well, I know I was telling you earlier, but growing up and seeing you in all these pay-per-view fights and seeing you actually go ahead and fix up all these fighters is kind of crazy to have you in front of me. So really, I want to go ahead and thank you for being here, and of course, I want to thank you for joining us on this podcast. Sure. But most of all, I want to thank you for another reason. I want to thank you because a lot of times people that watch MMA and people that watch boxing don't understand what a boxer goes through. And there's a number of people that I can count on my hand that try to make the sport of boxing and MMA better. And I want to thank you for that. I truly think that being able to take care of these fighters and being able to go ahead and take care of them is just great.
It's a big responsibility, and it's one where you're willing to take. So.
Yeah, well, you know, that goes back to, thanks, I appreciate the compliments on that. And that goes back to my parents, you know, being farm workers and fighting for the rights of the farm workers with Cesar Chavez and all that, and just that whole movement. So we've always been like that. It is working for the underdog. And of course, you know, maybe you're scared to ask, but when the UFC let me go, that's because I spoke up for everybody. And turns out that for me, it was the best thing that happened. And I know one of the Brazilian coaches came up to me one time when we were doing the fights during COVID. And he comes up to me and we're having lunch and he has his tray. He says, Stish, we, the coaches, the fighters, we thank you for speaking up because we couldn't. Right, so I was the voice of these guys, you know. So yeah, you got to always speak up for what's right.
Well, man, thank you so much again. I want to thank you for another reason as well. The reason why I want to thank you is because, you know, growing up in the Mexican community, you don't go ahead and see a lot of entrepreneurs or a lot of people that can go ahead and motivate us. And I want to thank you for being one of the people to go ahead and motivate La Raza and mostly all of us
all
here,
the
you know.
Chicanos out there,
thank you, all the
Hispanics,
minorities in general. Thank you so much, man. I really want to thank you for that, man.
No, and it's natural, you know, when you know, yeah, it's simple to do. You know, when I moved there, I would told everybody, I said, look, man, I'm going to the top. I'm taking a bus. If you want to get on that bus with me, vámonos. If not, I'm going with or without you, right? And that's always been my thing. But yeah, you got to always fight for the underdog, you know, and especially if you have a voice. and you have a platform, right? And the time when Dana let me go, you remember when he said Stitch and I were never friends?
Yeah,
well, I guess that meme is still going around. When Ugas fought Earl Spence, Steve Jackson, the basketball player, now he commentates for Showtime. We took a picture together and he put it out on Twitter, and all these Stitch was never my friend jokes were coming out on his thing. And my daughter Carla says, "Oh yeah, it's like the third biggest one." What Nate Diaz said, and this one, and another one. So people never forget. So,
yeah, man. Well, thank you again, man. Thank you, Stitch, for coming and motivating us most of all. So thank you.
Of course. Well, good luck on your show, man.
Thank you so much, man.
Got a lot more stories, man. So, whatever I could do to help you out, let's do it again.